The house stood like a warning at the edge of Blackwater Gulch. Weathered boards, broken windows, a roof that sagged under decades of desert sun. The locals called it the Death House. 5 families had tried to live there. 5 families had died there. Some found hanging from rafters, others with throats slit in their beds. The last owner vanished entirely, leaving only a pool of blood on the kitchen floor. For 20 years, it remained empty except for tumbleweeds and whispered legends. Then came the Apache, tall and scarred, riding in on a storm-dark night. What ancient power protected the gold hidden beneath those cursed floorboards? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from. And if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Nakohe sat atop his Mustang, rain pelting his weathered face as lightning split the sky. The storm had chased him for 3 days across the desert, as if the spirits themselves sought to guide him to this place. His hand instinctively touched the bone-handled knife at his belt, the last gift from his father before the cavalry came. The town of Blackwater Gulch lay before him, a collection of wooden structures clinging to existence at the edge of nowhere. Oil lamps flickered in windows, small defiances against the gathering dark. Nakohe's eyes were drawn beyond the town to the solitary house on the hill. Unlike the other buildings, no light shone there. It stood dark and abandoned, yet somehow more alive than anything else in his vision. "That place calls to you too, doesn't it?" he whispered to his horse, who snorted nervously in response. The main street turned to mud beneath his horse's hooves as he rode slowly into town. Faces appeared in windows, then quickly vanished. A door that had been opened slammed shut. Nkosh had seen this reaction before. Fear mixed with hatred, curiosity tempered by generations of mistrust. Only the saloon maintained any pretense of normalcy. Piano notes spilled into the street alongside yellow lamplight. Nkohe dismounted, tying his horse to the hitching post. His bones ached with fatigue. 52 winters had passed since his birth, and each one seemed to have left its mark. As he climbed the steps, the piano fell silent. He pushed through the bat-wing doors to find a dozen pairs of eyes fixed upon him. Conversations died. A glass shattered somewhere in the back. "We don't serve your kind here," the barkeeper said, reaching beneath the counter. Nakohe raised his empty hands. "I seek only information, then shelter from the storm." An old man at a corner table coughed deliberately. "You best ride on, Apache. Ain't nothing for you in Blackwater." "I have traveled far," Nakohe replied, his voice steady. "The storm grows worse." A woman in a red dress approached, her eyes sharp as a hawk's. "What information do you seek, stranger?" "The house on the hill, the one that stands alone." The saloon fell completely silent. Even the rain seemed to pause. "Death House," someone whispered. The woman's face paled. "No one goes there." "5 families? All dead. How?" Nakohe asked. "Different ways," the barkeeper answered, his hostility momentarily forgotten. "Weber family was first. Found hanging from the rafters, all 4 of them. Then the Millers, throats cut in their sleep. Patterson couple disappeared completely. The Richardsons were next, burned in their beds. In the Turners," he shook his head, "just blood on the kitchen floor. Nothing else." Nakohe nodded slowly. "And since then?" 20 years empty," the woman said. "Some say the land was sacred to your people, that we shouldn't have built there." Thunder cracked directly overhead, making several patrons jump. "I will stay there tonight," Nakohe announced. A collective gasp filled the room. "You're either brave or a fool," the woman said. "Perhaps both," Nakohe replied with the faintest smile. "Or perhaps your ghosts do not hunger for Apache blood." He turned to leave when a voice called out, "Wait." A gray-haired man with a silver star pinned to his chest approached. "Sheriff Thornton." "You got a name, mister?" "I am called Nakohe." "Well, Nakohe, that's private property up there, technically. Does anyone claim it?" The sheriff sighed. "Not for 2 decades. Listen, there's a stable behind my office. You can—" "I thank you for your offer," Nakohe interrupted, "but I must decline. The house has called me here." He stepped back into the rain, leaving murmurs of "madman" and "poor bastard" in his wake. Mounting his horse, he felt a strange certainty settle over him. The massacre of his people, his years of wandering, all had led him to this moment, this place. The house loomed larger as he approached, a dark silhouette against the storm-grey sky. Its windows were like empty eye sockets in a skull. The porch steps creaked beneath his weight, the sound unnaturally loud, despite the storm's fury. From his saddlebag, Nakohe removed a small leather bundle wrapped with sinew. Inside lay a golden eagle feather, a small piece of turquoise, and a pinch of sacred tobacco. His mother's voice echoed in his memory. The spirits recognize respect. He placed the offering at the threshold, then pushed the door open. It swung inward with surprising ease, as if welcoming him. The smell hit him immediately. Dust, decay, and something metallic that might have been old blood. "I enter with respect," he said to the darkness. "I seek the truth you hide." Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the interior, overturned furniture, stained floors, scratched walls. In that instant, Nakohe saw it was not just a house of death, it was a house of secrets. Sheriff Caleb Thornton stood at his office window, watching the deluge transform Main Street into a river of mud. His reflection stared back, a face weathered by 30 years of frontier justice, eyes that had seen too much. The lamp on his desk cast long shadows across the room, touching the edges of the yellowed newspaper framed on the wall. "You really think he'll survive the night, Sheriff?" Deputy Miller asked, stoking the potbelly stove. Thornton didn't answer immediately. His mind was on the Apache, who'd ridden into town like a ghost from the past. There was something in the man's eyes, not fear, but purpose. "Sheriff?" "No one else has," Thornton finally replied. He turned from the window and settled behind his desk, pulling open the bottom drawer. From it, he retrieved a leather-bound ledger, its spine cracked with age. The official record of Blackwater Gulch, started by the first sheriff 3 decades ago. "You ever wonder why that house was built first?" Thornton asked, thumbing through brittle pages. "Before the church, before this office. 3 men founded this town in 52, Prescott, Turner, and Richardson. Gold prospectors who struck it rich, then decided to build their own town, instead of spending their fortune in someone else's." The deputy pulled up a chair. "Mayor Prescott's grandfather was one of the founders, Augustus Prescott, along with William Turner and James Richardson." Thornton found the page he sought. "They built that house together while planning the town. Largest structure for 50 miles, a symbol of their success. But they all died there." Thornton nodded grimly. "Within a year, first Richardson, found with a pickaxe in his skull. Then Turner disappeared. Finally, Prescott hanged himself from the rafters. Official story was grief. Lightning flashed, briefly illuminating the old newspaper headline, "Blackwater Founder's Tragic End." "But you don't believe that," Deputy Miller said. "Not a question, but a statement." Thornton closed the ledger. 3 men find enough gold to build a town. They construct one house. All die violently. Then every family who lives thereafter meets the same fate." He shook his head. "That's not grief or coincidence." The door burst open, admitting a gust of wind and rain, along with Eliza Watts, owner of the Red Dog Saloon. Water dripped from her elaborate hairstyle as she fixed Thornton with an accusatory stare. "You let that Indian go up to Death House," she said. "He'll be dead by morning. He's a grown man, Eliza, made his choice. Did you tell him about the others?" "He knew enough." Eliza removed her damp shawl, hanging it near the stove. "Mayor Prescott's asking for you. Herbert Pinkerton's with him." Thornton's expression darkened. "Pinkerton's still in town? Thought he finished his business assessment last week." "Apparently not." "They're at Prescott's house, waiting." The sheriff stood with a weary sigh. "Miller, keep an eye on things. I'll see what his honor wants." Outside, the rain had slackened to a steady drizzle. Thornton made his way through puddle-strewn streets toward the large Victorian at the north end of town. Unlike the humble wooden structures surrounding it, Mayor Howard Prescott's home featured painted trim glass windows and a wraparound porch, ostentation bought with family gold. Martha Wilkins intercepted him before he reached the house. Despite her 70 years, the town historian moved with surprising speed, her silver hair escaping from its pins. "Sheriff, a word, please." Thornton tipped his hat. "Evening, Martha." I'm expected at the mayor's. It's about the Apache. She clutched a faded leather journal to her chest. I recognized his tribal markings. Years ago, before the massacres, a band of Chiricahua camped in the valley each summer. I was just a girl then. What's this about, Martha? She glanced nervously at the mayor's house. The official town history, it's not complete. The land where Death House stands. Her voice dropped to a whisper. It wasn't just purchased. There was blood. An Apache guide led the founders to the gold. Afterward, Thornton's face hardened. They killed him. Martha nodded. His people came looking. There was a fight. More deaths. Then the founders built on that very spot, as if claiming it forever. She pressed the journal into Thornton's hands. My father's diary. He was the first doctor here. Before Thornton could respond, the mayor's front door opened. Howard Prescott stood framed in the light, his substantial frame casting a long shadow. Sheriff, we've been waiting. Do join us. Thornton quickly tucked the journal inside his coat. Coming, Mayor. As he climbed the porch steps, Thornton caught movement in an upstairs window, the silhouette of Herbert Pinkerton watching him. Something about the man had bothered Thornton from the day he arrived. Pinkerton claimed to represent Eastern investors, but his questions focused more on the town's history than its future. Terrible business about that Apache, Prescott said as he ushered Thornton inside. Going to that cursed house. Some might say it's his right, Thornton replied carefully. Given the history, Prescott's smile faltered. History, Sheriff, is written by those who survive to tell it. Now come. Pinkerton has some concerns about town security. As the door closed behind them, Thornton couldn't shake the feeling that the Apache's arrival had set. Something in motion, something long buried but never truly dead. Nakohe moved through the abandoned house with the caution of a man, walking through a sleeping predator's den. The storm outside provided the only light, brief flashes of lightning that illuminated rooms frozen in time. A dining table set for a meal never eaten. A child's doll face down in a corner. A rocking chair that seemed to hold the impression of its last occupant. He found a half-melted candle in a kitchen drawer and lit it. The small flame casting grotesque shadows on walls stained with what might have been blood, or merely the rust-colored residue of water damage. The silence between thunderclaps was absolute, as if the house held its breath, watching him. In the parlor, Nakohe knelt to examine a dark stain on the wooden floor. He traced its edge with a weathered finger, then brought it to his nose. Blood old, but unmistakable. Nearby lay a woman's hairbrush, several long strands, still entangled in its bristles. He left it undisturbed. The candle's light caught something metallic beneath an overturned cabinet. Nakohe carefully shifted the furniture to reveal a silver locket on a broken chain. He picked it up, feeling its weight in his palm. The clasp was damaged, but with gentle pressure it opened to reveal a small photograph, a young woman with serious eyes, her hair pulled severely back. On the opposite side, a lock of dark hair was secured beneath a small glass panel. You witnessed what happened here, he whispered to the locket. Your secrets are safe with me for now. He pocketed the item and continued his exploration. The house had been built solidly, despite its current decay. 2 stories with multiple bedrooms upstairs, a large kitchen, parlor, and study on the main floor. It spoke of wealth and ambition, not the humble beginnings of a frontier town. The study held particular interest. Shelves of mouldering books, a desk with drawers pulled open and papers scattered, as if someone had searched hastily for something important. A large blood stain darkened the center of a faded Turkish carpet. Nakohe's moccasins made no sound as he crossed to the desk. Most papers had rotted into illegibility, but one document protected in a leather portfolio remained partly readable. A map of the region, much older than the house itself. Spanish text in the margins, nearly faded away. And markings in the hills where Blackwater Gulch now stood. Symbols Nakohe recognized from his people's traditions. Sacred sites, burial grounds. A sound from upstairs, like the soft footfall of a child, broke his concentration. Nakohe didn't reach for his knife. Instead, he spoke into the darkness. I am a guest in this place of death. I mean no disrespect to those who remain. No response came, but the air seemed to shift, as if something had moved closer to listen. Rain pounded against the windows as Nakohe climbed the creaking stairs, candle held high. The upper hallway stretched before him, doors ajar to reveal bedrooms in various states of disarray. In one, a man's boots stood at attention beside a bed, waiting for feet that would never fill them again. In another, a Bible lay open on a nightstand, its pages rippled from moisture. The last room at the hall's end was different, neat, almost untouched. A woman's vanity with perfume bottles arranged precisely, bed linen smooth and unwrinkled, window curtains drawn. Only a fine layer of dust suggested abandonment. As Nakohe entered, the candle flame bent horizontally, though no draught was apparent. The temperature plummeted. His breath fogged before him. "Show yourself," he said calmly. "I'm Nakohe of the Chiricahua. I seek truth, not conflict." The flame extinguished, plunging the room into darkness. In the blackness, a woman's voice whispered, so faint he might have imagined it. Beneath, lightning illuminated the room for an instant, revealing nothing but empty corners and abandoned furniture. When darkness returned, Nakohe remained still, listening. Only the storm answered. He relit the candle and knelt in the center of the room, placing the silver locket before him. From a pouch at his waist, he took a pinch of sacred herbs, sprinkling them in a circle. The pungent aroma filled the air as he began to chant softly in his native tongue, a prayer for protection, for guidance, for truth. Hours passed. The storm gradually subsided, leaving only the occasional rumble of distant thunder. Nakohe did not move from his position, even as his legs cramped and his throat grew dry. The candle burned down to a stub, its light weakening. Just before dawn, as the first grey light seeped through the window, Nakohe opened eyes he didn't remember closing. The locket lay open before him, but the photograph had changed. Now it showed not the young woman's face, but a section of floor in what appeared to be the parlor downstairs. A specific floorboard, marked with a pattern of 3 notches. "Beneath," he repeated, understanding at last, as full daylight broke over Blackwater Gulch. Townsfolk gathered cautiously at the bottom of the hill, expecting to find another tragedy. Instead, they saw Nakohe emerge onto the porch, very much alive, the silver locket glinting in his hand as he surveyed the gathered crowd with eyes that had seen beyond the veil. Sheriff Thornton pushed through the crowd that had gathered at the base of the hill, murmurs of disbelief rippling through the onlookers. The Apache stood on the porch of Death House, impossibly alive, silhouetted against the morning sun. "Give way," Thornton ordered, his hand resting on his holstered Colt. Deputy Miller followed close behind, nervously fingering his own weapon. The crowd parted reluctantly, eyes fixed on Nakohe. Some made warding gestures. An old woman clutched a rosary to her chest, lips moving in silent prayer. "He survived," someone whispered. "No one survives. Means he's in league with whatever's in there," came another voice. Thornton ignored them, stopping at the bottom of the porch steps. "Surprised to see you in one piece," he called up to Nakohe. The Apache's face remained impassive. "The dead do not hunger for my blood. They seek justice. Justice for what?" Before Nakohe could answer, Mayor Prescott arrived, his expensive boots splashing through puddles left by the night's storm. Herbert Pinkerton trailed behind him, thin and watchful as a coyote. "This is private property," Prescott announced, his jowls quivering with indignation. "You're trespassing, sir." Nakohe descended the steps slowly. "Whose property?" "The dead claim no land." "The town's property," Prescott insisted, color rising in his face. "Abandoned or not, you had no right—" "Howard, please." The crowd parted again as Martha Wilkins approached, leaning on a carved walking stick. Despite her age, her eyes were sharp as she studied Nakohe. "I'd like a word with our visitor." The Apache inclined his head respectfully toward the elderly woman. Something passed between them, recognition perhaps. "Mrs. Wilkins," Prescott protested. "This is hardly the time—" "I remember your people," Martha said to Nakohe, ignoring the mayor. "The Chiricahua. You camped in the valley every summer when I was a child. My father treated your sick sometimes." Nakoa's expression softened slightly. "You have a good memory, grandmother. Your markings," she continued, gesturing to the faded patterns on his leather vest. "They're of the Eagle clan, are they not?" A ripple of surprise crossed Nakohe's face. "You know our ways. I was curious as a girl. Learned what I could." Martha tapped her walking stick on the ground decisively. "Sheriff, I'm taking this man to my home for breakfast. You're welcome to join us if you're concerned about the town's safety." Prescott stepped forward. "Now see here—" "Actually, Mayor," Thornton interrupted, "I think that's a fine idea. I have some questions myself." The mayor's face darkened. "Then I shall accompany you as well." "As will I," Pinkerton added quietly, speaking for the first time. His accent carried traces of the East Coast, refined and out of place in the frontier town. Martha's home sat opposite the church, a modest structure filled with books, artifacts, and the accumulated memories of a lifetime on the frontier. She moved about her kitchen with practiced efficiency, despite her age, setting coffee to boil, while her visitors arranged themselves awkwardly in her small sitting room. "You were there all night?" Thornton asked Nakohe, who stood examining a shelf of artifacts rather than sitting. "Yes. And?" "The house has secrets, as does this town." Prescott cleared his throat. "Wild superstition. That house has an unfortunate history, nothing more." 5 families, Nakohe said, turning to face the mayor, "all dead. This is more than unfortunate." Martha placed a steaming mug of coffee in Nakohe's hands. "Did you see anything in there?" "Not with my eyes." Pinkerton leaned forward in his chair. "What does that mean exactly?" Instead of answering, Nakohe reached into his pocket and withdrew the silver locket. "This belonged to someone who died there," Martha gasped softly. "That's Rebecca Turner's, William Turner's wife. She was the first to die in that house." "How can you be certain?" Thornton asked. Martha crossed to a bookshelf and retrieved a photograph in a wooden frame. It showed 3 men and a woman standing before the newly built house. "Town founders," she explained. "Augustus Prescott, James Richardson, William Turner, and his wife Rebecca." The woman in the photograph wore the locket. Mayor Prescott's complexion had gone ashen. "My grandfather," he said quietly, pointing to the tallest of the men. Nakohe studied the photograph carefully. The men stood proud, confident, with the particular arrogance of those who believed they had conquered both nature and fortune. The woman's expression was different, wary, almost afraid. "There's something else," Nakohe said. He lifted his leather vest to reveal a worn canvas pouch hanging from a cord around his neck. Opening it, he removed a folded piece of parchment yellowed with age. "I found this 20 summers ago, on the body of a Spanish priest. He had been dead many years." Nakohe unfolded the document carefully. "It speaks of a great treasure hidden by conquistadors in these mountains. Gold taken from my people's sacred sites." The parchment was weathered, its ink faded but still legible. A map drawn in a shaky hand, with Spanish text around the borders. And in the center, a location marked with a symbol identical to the one on the doors of Death House. "The founders knew," Nakohe said, his eyes locking with Mayor Prescott's. "They found something beneath that house, something that turned them against each other." Pinkerton abruptly stood. "If you'll excuse me," he said, straightening his jacket, "I have business to attend to." As the door closed behind him, Sheriff Thornton's hand moved instinctively to his gun. "I don't trust that man." "Nor should you," Nakohe agreed. "He has the eyes of one who hunts." Martha Wilkins looked from the parchment to the photograph, her expression troubled. "There were rumors even then about how they really found the gold that built this town." She glanced at Mayor Prescott. "No offense intended, Howard." Prescott waved a dismissive hand, but his eyes never left the parchment map. "Ancient history. Irrelevant now." "Perhaps not," Nakohe said. "The house has shown me where to look." Thornton set down his coffee cup with a decisive clink. "Then I believe it's time we had a proper look at Death House, officially." Midday sun streamed through the broken windows of Death House, dust motes dancing in the light. The house seemed different by day, less menacing, more melancholy. Sheriff Thornton watched as Nakohe moved with deliberate precision across the parlor floor, occasionally kneeling to test a board with his fingertips. "What exactly are we looking for?" Thornton asked, hat in hand out of some instinctive respect for the dead who had perished here. Nakohe didn't answer immediately. His focus remained on the floor, moving toward the spot the locket had revealed to him during the night. "The woman, Rebecca Turner, she left a message in the locket?" Martha Wilkins asked. She had insisted on accompanying them, despite the mayor's objections. Howard Prescott had eventually retreated to his office, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. "Yes." Nakohe stopped before a section of floorboards near the cold fireplace. Here, the boards looked no different from the others, weathered oak, stained with age and neglect. But when Nakohe pressed his palm against one particular plank, a barely audible click sounded from beneath. "Well, I'll be damned," Thornton murmured. With careful movements, Nakohe worked his fingers around the edges of the board, lifting it to reveal a small hollow space beneath. Inside lay a wooden box, its surface carved with intricate patterns. "That's Spanish workmanship," Martha observed. Leaning forward, Nakohe lifted the box carefully and set it on the floor between them. The lid was secured with a simple iron clasp, unrusted despite the years. When he opened it, all three leaned in to see the contents. Nestled on a bed of faded velvet lay a brass key, ornate and heavy. Beside it, a folded piece of paper and a small leather-bound book no larger than a man's palm. "A diary," Martha whispered. Thornton picked up the key, testing its weight in his palm. "This opens something significant." Nakohe unfolded the paper, revealing elegant handwriting in faded ink. "For whoever finds this, they murdered my husband for what lies beneath. They will come for me next. The entrance is in the root cellar. May God forgive us for what we unleashed. Rebecca Turner, April 12th, 1854 Chill that had nothing to do with the temperature passed through the room." "Root cellar?" Thornton asked. Martha nodded. "Houses like this always had one. For storing vegetables through winter." Nakohe carefully opened the small diary. Most pages were filled with domestic accounts, household expenses, social calls, recipes. But the final entries told a different story. March 3rd, 1854. William came home after midnight again, his clothes covered in dirt. When questioned, he grew angry. Something has changed in him. March 15th. Overheard the three of them arguing. Augustus wanted to bring in more men. William refused. James threatened to tell everyone. They fell silent when they saw me. March 30th. Found strange gold coins in William's desk, unlike any currency I've seen. When confronted, he slapped me for the first time in our marriage. Said I would thank him when we were richer than kings. April 2nd. James Richardson found dead this morning. A mining accident, they claim, but his wounds looked nothing like any accident I've ever seen. April 11th. William confessed tonight. They found something beneath the house. Something left by the Spanish centuries ago. He's terrified of Augustus now. Says the gold has changed him. I begged William to leave, but he says it's too late. The final entry was dated April 12th, the same day as the note. The handwriting was rushed, almost frantic. William missing since last night. Augustus came by asking strange questions. I've hidden the key in this account. God help whoever finds what's below. Silence filled the parlor as they absorbed the implications. Root cellar, Nakohe repeated, rising to his feet. Where would it be? Thornton led them through the kitchen to a small door that might have been mistaken for a pantry. It opened onto a narrow staircase descending into darkness. The smell of damp earth rose to meet them. I'll get a lantern from my horse, Thornton said. When he returned with the light, they descended carefully into the cellar. The space was small and unremarkable. Dirt floor, stone walls, empty shelves along one side. No obvious entrance to anything deeper. Nakohe moved slowly around the perimeter, one hand trailing along the wall. The entrance is hidden. Like the floorboard above. Martha studied the floor. Look for disturbances in the dirt, places that might have been recently dug. Thornton raised his lantern higher, casting light into the corners. Nothing seems... Wait. He stopped, focusing the light on one section of the back wall. The mortar's different here, newer. Nakohe joined him, examining the stonework. Several large stones appeared to have been reset, the mortar around them lighter in color. He pressed against them systematically until, like before, a soft click emanated from within the wall. A section of stone swung inward, revealing a dark passageway beyond. The brass key in Thornton's pocket suddenly felt heavier after "Sheriff," Nakohe said with the faintest hint of a smile. Thornton hesitated, then squared his shoulders. "No, this is your discovery. You lead. I'll wait here," Martha said, her voice uncharacteristically small. In case you need help." Nakohe took the lantern and stepped into the darkness. After a moment's hesitation, Thornton followed, his hand resting on his revolver. The passageway descended sharply, rough-hewn steps carved into the earth. The air grew colder, damper. The light caught glimpses of support beams, professional mining work. "The founders were prospectors," Thornton murmured. "They'd know how to build this." At the bottom of the stairs, they found themselves facing a heavy wooden door, reinforced with iron bands. In the center, a large keyhole waited. "This is what Richardson discovered," Nakohe said quietly. "What they killed him to keep secret." Thornton removed the brass key from his pocket. It caught the lamplight, gleaming like an ancient sentinel. Whatever's on the other side changed these men, turned them into killers. Nakohe's eyes were steady. Gold has always had that power. The key slid into the lock with perfect precision. As Thornton turned it, the mechanism engaged with a sound like distant thunder. The door swung open with a groan of ancient hinges, releasing air that smelled of earth and time. Thornton held the lantern higher, its light pushing weakly against the darkness beyond. A chamber had been carved from the living rock, its walls reinforced with timbers that looked surprisingly sound despite their age. "Professional work," Thornton murmured. "Not done by the founders," Nakohe replied, stepping cautiously into the chamber. "This craftsmanship is much older." Their footsteps echoed as they entered, disturbing dust that might have lain undisturbed for decades or centuries. The chamber was perhaps 20 feet square, its ceiling supported by thick wooden beams. Against the far wall stood a massive oak table, its surface obscured by a canvas covering. Nakohe approached it slowly, while Thornton examined the walls. Rough sketches had been drawn directly onto the stone, maps, calculations, strange symbols that might have been Spanish or something older. "They were searching for something specific," Thornton said, tracing a diagram with his finger. "Something they knew was here." Nakohe carefully lifted the canvas from the table. Beneath lay an orderly arrangement of artifacts, tools, documents, and what appeared to be surveying equipment. But dominating the center was an intricately carved stone tablet, approximately 2 feet square and 4 inches thick. "The Sunstone," Nakohe whispered, his voice heavy with recognition. "You know what this is? Stories passed down through generations." Nakohe's fingers hovered above the tablet without touching it. "The Spanish came seeking gold, but found something they didn't understand. Something sacred to my people." The tablet's surface featured concentric circles, carved in relief, with symbols positioned at precise intervals. At the center was a depression that might have once held something now missing. "It's a map," Nakohe continued, "but not just of places, of times. The old ones used it to track the seasons, the movements of sun and stars." His expression darkened. "It was stolen from our sacred site 300 summers ago. The Spanish believed it would lead them to gold." "Did it?" "Yes, but not as they expected." Nakohe finally touched the stone, running his fingers along the intricate carvings. The tablet showed where the earth would yield its treasures during certain alignments of the stars. Gold appeared where none had been before, then vanished again with the changing seasons. Thornton frowned. "That's not possible. Your science would agree. But the old ones understood things your people have forgotten." Nakohe pointed to one of the symbols, a stylized eagle with outstretched wings. "This marks a place in the mountains north of here. When the summer solstice sun touches a certain peak, the earth reveals its heart." "You're saying the gold appears and disappears?" "I'm saying the path to it does." Nakohe's eyes reflected the lantern light. "A cave that opens only at certain times. The Spanish found it once, took what they could carry, but couldn't find it again when they returned. Thornton shook his head in disbelief, but continued his examination of the chamber. In a corner, partially hidden behind a stack of crates, he discovered a small wooden chest. Unlike the utilitarian equipment on the table, this was ornate, with brass fittings and a lock that had been broken open. "Look at this," he called to Nakohe. The chest was empty, save for a single item. A crucifix made of hammered silver, its surface tarnished almost black with age. Thornton lifted it carefully. Despite its religious significance, the craftsmanship was crude, almost primitive. "Spanish missionary work," Nakohe said. "They gave such things to converts." Thornton turned the crucifix over. On the back, someone had scratched a series of numbers and letters into the silver, a code of some kind. Before Nakohe could answer, a sound from above made both men freeze. Footsteps in the house, then Martha's voice raised in alarm. "Sheriff, Mr. Nakohe." "Someone's here," another voice responded, deep, authoritative. "Mayor Prescott, where are they, Mrs. Wilkins?" Thornton and Nakohe exchanged glances. The sheriff pocketed the silver crucifix and motioned toward the door. "We should—" A gunshot echoed from above, followed by Martha's cry of pain. They raced back through the passageway and up the earthen stairs, emerging into the root cellar to find Martha slumped against the wall, clutching her arm. Blood seeped between her fingers. "They shot me," she said, her voice tight with shock. "Howard and that Pinkerton fellow. They demanded to know what you'd found." Thornton helped her to her feet. "We need to get you to the doctor." "No time," Nakohe said, peering cautiously up the cellar stairs. "They're still in the house." The sound of furniture being overturned came from above, followed by Prescott's voice. "Find that entrance, damn you!" "My grandfather's journal mentioned a cellar. Take her through the tunnel," Thornton whispered, drawing his revolver. "There must be another exit. These passages wouldn't have been built with only one way out." "And you?" Nakohe asked, already supporting Martha's weight. "I'll buy you time." "Go!" Nakohe hesitated only a moment before nodding. "The sunstone must not fall into their hands. It belongs with my people. Take it." "And this," Thornton pressed the silver crucifix into Nakohe's palm, "might be important." Footsteps approached the cellar door. Thornton positioned himself at the bottom of the stairs, gun raised. "Find us at Eliza's saloon after dark," he whispered. Back entrance. Nakohe and Martha disappeared into the tunnel, taking the lantern with them. Thornton stood alone in the growing darkness, listening to the approaching footsteps. The silver tablet and its secrets now beyond the mayor's reach. Above, the cellar door creaked open. The tunnel stretched before them, darkness swallowing the feeble light of their lantern. Nakohe supported Martha's weight as they moved deeper into the earth, away from the sounds of confrontation behind them. The stone tablet weighed heavy in his makeshift sling, a burden both physical and spiritual. "Can you continue?" he asked Martha, whose face had grown pale with blood loss. "I've survived worse than a flesh wound," she replied, though her voice wavered. "Keep moving!" The passage began to slope upward after several hundred yards, the packed earth giving way to stone steps worn smooth by time. Nakohe's instincts told him they were no longer beneath the house, but had passed beyond it, perhaps under the town itself. "This wasn't built by the founders," Martha observed between labored breaths. "It's too extensive. Spanish work," Nakohe confirmed. "To move gold without being seen." They paused at a fork in the tunnel. Nakohe lowered Martha gently to the ground and studied both passages. From his pocket, he withdrew the silver crucifix Thornton had given him. The scratched markings on its back caught his attention, not random as he'd first thought, but deliberate. "What do you make of this?" he asked, showing Martha the crude etchings. She squinted in the dim light. "Numbers and letters, like coordinates." Nakohe rotated the crucifix, considering it from different angles. "Or directions." He held it beside the left passage entrance, then the right. On the right wall, barely visible in the lantern light, was a small cross etched into the stone, identical in proportion to the crucifix in his hand. This way, he decided, helping Martha to her feet. The passage narrowed as they proceeded, the ceiling lowering until Nakohe had to stoop. The air grew fresher, suggesting an opening ahead. Finally, the tunnel ended at what appeared to be a solid wall of earth and stone. Nakohe examined it carefully, then pressed against different sections. Nothing moved. A dead end, Martha asked, leaning heavily against the wall. No. Nakohe held the lantern higher, revealing a wooden beam above their heads with strange notches cut into it. He reached up and ran his fingers along the notches, feeling for anything unusual. Near the center, one section depressed slightly under his touch. The wall before them shuddered, then slid aside, revealing a cramped space beyond, a root cellar similar to the one beneath Death House, but smaller and long abandoned. Dust and cobwebs covered empty shelves. A narrow staircase led upward. "Where are we?" Martha whispered as they emerged. Nakohe climbed the stairs and cautiously pushed open the hatch at the top. Daylight streamed in, momentarily blinding after the darkness of the tunnel. He peered out, then helped Martha through the opening. They stood in a small shed behind a weathered building. Through a gap in the planks, Nakohe could see Blackwater Gulch's main street about 50 yards away. "The old assay office," Martha said with surprise. "Abandoned after the initial gold rush dried up." Nakohe eased her down onto an overturned crate. "You need a doctor." "No!" Martha clutched his arm with surprising strength. "They'll look for me there. Take me to Eliza's place, the back room of the saloon. She keeps medical supplies. The sheriff said to meet there after dark. Eliza can be trusted. She has no love for Howard Prescott." Nakohe considered their options, then nodded. Moving carefully, he helped Martha to her feet. The sunstone tablet remained secure in its makeshift sling across his back. As they prepared to leave the shed, Martha's hand dipped into her dress pocket. "I almost forgot. When they shot me, I grabbed this from Howard's coat." She withdrew a folded document yellowed with age. Nakohe unfolded it carefully. The paper was brittle, the handwriting faded but legible. A last will and testament dated April 1854. Signed by Augustus Prescott Die, Augustus Prescott. "Being of sound mind, though failing body, do hereby bequeath all my earthly possessions and holdings, including my share in the township of Blackwater Gulch, to my son, George Prescott. With the following exception: the Spanish gold recovered from the Indian burial site shall be returned to the Apache people from whom it was wrongfully taken. I've seen what greed does to men's souls. The deaths of William Turner and James Richardson weigh heavy on my conscience as I face my final judgment. The location of the gold is recorded in my private journal, secured with this document, but there was no journal attached, only the will itself. Howard's grandfather never intended to keep the gold," Martha murmured. "He had a change of heart before he died, yet the gold was never returned," Nakohe replied. "George Prescott, Howard's father, must have ignored the will. Hidden it." Nakohe carefully refolded the document. "This explains Howard's desperation. If this will were made public, he'd lose everything. The Prescott fortune, his standing in town." Martha's expression hardened. "His family's entire legacy is built on a lie." From the direction of Death House came the sound of raised voices. A search party was forming. "We must move," Nakohe said, tucking the will inside his vest. "Can you walk a little further?" Martha nodded grimly. "Lead the way." They slipped from the shed into the alley behind the assay office, keeping to the shadows as they made their way toward the Red Dog Saloon. The document against Nakohe's chest felt like a burning coal, a piece of truth that could set fire to Blackwater Gulch's carefully constructed history, the back door of the Red Dog Saloon opened before Nakohe could knock. Eliza Watts stood framed in the doorway, a shotgun resting casually against her shoulder. Her sharp eyes took in Martha's bloodied sleeve and Nakohe's burden in an instant. "Trouble follows you, Apache," she said, but stepped aside to let them enter. The back room was a stark contrast to the garishly decorated saloon beyond. Simple furnishings, neatly kept ledgers on a desk, and a narrow bed in the corner suggested a woman of practical mind. Behind the flashy exterior, she showed the world. "She's been shot," Nakohe explained as he helped Martha to the bed. Eliza set her shotgun aside and quickly gathered supplies from a cabinet. "Prescott's men?" "The mayor himself," Martha replied through gritted teeth. Eliza's hands paused momentarily in their work.
Howard, not his hired guns.
He's desperate, Nakohe said. We found something he once kept hidden. While Eliza tended to Martha's wound, Nakohe placed the sunstone tablet on the desk, unwrapping it carefully from its makeshift covering. The ancient symbols seemed to pulse in the room's dim light, as if alive with contained power. What in God's name is that? Eliza asked, glancing over her shoulder. The reason people die in that house, Nakohe replied. A sharp rap at the door silenced them. Nakohe moved swiftly, positioning himself beside the entrance, knife drawn. Eliza reached for her shotgun. "It's Thornton," came a low voice from outside. Eliza exhaled and opened the door. The sheriff slipped inside, his normally composed face tense with urgency. A bruise was forming along his jawline. "They're searching the town," he said without preamble. "Deputy Miller's leading them, claiming you kidnapped Martha and assaulted me." "Your face suggests otherwise," Eliza observed dryly, returning to Martha's wound. Thornton touched his bruised jaw. "Prescott wasn't pleased when I couldn't tell him where you'd gone." His eyes fell on the stone tablet. "You got it out. And something else." Nakohe withdrew the will from his vest, handing it to Thornton. The sheriff read it quickly, his expression darkening. "This changes everything. If people believe it," Martha cautioned from the bed. "Howard will claim it's a forgery." Thornton examined the document more carefully. "This seal at the bottom, it's from Judge Holloway's office in Santa Fe. He died 10 years ago, but his records would still exist." He looked up at Nakohe. "We need to authenticate this." "No time," Eliza interrupted, securing a bandage around Martha's arm. "Prescott's men are searching door to door. They'll be here soon." From her dress pocket, she withdrew a tarnished brass object that gleamed dully in the lamplight, a key similar to the one they had found beneath the floorboards, but smaller. "My father was one of the original settlers," Eliza explained, placing the key on the desk beside the tablet. "He was the town's first barkeep. The founders would gather here, drink too much, talk too freely." Her mouth twisted bitterly. "He knew they'd found something under that house. Spanish gold, they claimed. Enough to make them kings. This key," Thornton began, "opens a strong box in the bank. My father saw Augustus Prescott hide something there just before he died. Said Prescott was a changed man at the end, raving about blood money and curses." Nakohe studied the key. "The missing journal mentioned in the will." "I believe so." Eliza's eyes hardened. "I've kept this key for 20 years, waiting for the right moment. The Prescotts have lorded over this town, treating people like my father, like me, as beneath them, all while sitting on stolen fortune." A commotion erupted from the saloon, raised voices, heavy footsteps. "Back room! Check the back room!" Deputy Miller's voice carried clearly through the thin walls. "No time to run," Thornton muttered, drawing his revolver. Eliza moved swiftly to a colorful rug in the corner, kicking it aside to reveal a trapdoor. "Cellar, quickly!" Nakohe gathered the tablet, while Thornton helped Martha to her feet. Eliza yanked the trapdoor open, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. "Go," she ordered. "I'll hold them off." "They'll arrest you," Martha protested. Eliza's smile was cold as winter. "Let them try. This is my establishment, and I've got half the town's secrets locked in my head. Even Howard Prescott won't risk pushing me too far." Nakohe descended first, carefully managing the heavy tablet. Thornton helped Martha down before following. From below, they watched Eliza replace the rug and slide a heavy trunk over the trapdoor. Her footsteps moved away, and they heard the backroom door open. "Deputy?" Eliza's voice came faintly from above. "To what do I owe this intrusion?" The cellar was small, but remarkably clean, lined with shelves of liquor bottles and supplies. A narrow tunnel led off to one side, another of Blackwater Gulch's hidden passages. "Where does that lead?" Thornton whispered, nodding toward the tunnel. "We'll find out," Nakohe replied, taking the brass key from his pocket. Their link to the final piece of the puzzle. Martha's face was pale in the dim light, filtering through the floorboards above. "The bank is at the other end of town. How do we reach it with Prescott's men everywhere?" Nakohe studied the sunstone tablet, its ancient symbols offering no answer to their immediate predicament. But the silver crucifix in his pocket felt suddenly significant. The Spanish built tunnels to move their gold, he said quietly. Perhaps they connected more than just the house and the assay office. Above them, Eliza's voice remained steady as she confronted the deputy. But they all knew her deception couldn't last forever. Soon, Prescott would bring the full weight of his authority against anyone helping them. "Time is running out," Thornton murmured, echoing Nakohe's thoughts. "For all of us." The tunnel beneath Eliza's saloon was narrower than those beneath Death House, forcing them to move in single file. Thornton led with a small oil lamp Nakohe had found in the cellar, while the Apache followed with the sunstone tablet secured across his back. Martha came last, one hand pressed against the wall for support, her wounded arm held tight against her body. These tunnels were built for men carrying gold, not wounded historians, she whispered, her attempt at humor undermined by the strain in her voice. "Not much further," Thornton reassured her. Though he had no idea how far the passage extended, the air grew stale as they progressed, suggesting this route had remained unused for decades. Cobwebs clung to their clothing, and twice they had to clear fallen debris from their path. The walls changed from shored timber to bare earth, then to stone that glistened with moisture. "We're deeper now," Nakohe observed, following the natural contours beneath the town. After 20 minutes of careful progress, they reached a junction where 3 tunnels branched off in different directions. Thornton raised the lamp, illuminating crude markings scratched into the stone above each passage. "Spanish," Martha confirmed, studying the faded symbols. "This one points east, toward the church, I believe. This one south, maybe the livery stables. And this," she paused, frowning at the third marking. "This symbol is different." Nakohe moved closer, his fingers tracing the etching, a circle with a cross beneath it. "Not Spanish. Apache." He turned to Martha with newfound respect. "You recognize this?" "I've studied your people's symbols for years," she replied, "though I never expected to find one here." "What does it mean?" Thornton asked. "Sacred place. Protected ground." Nakohe's expression grew contemplative. "Or burial site." They stared into the third tunnel, which sloped downward into deeper darkness. "The bank is east," Thornton reminded them. "We should take that route." "No," Nakohe's voice was firm. "We need to understand what lies at the heart of this mystery. Why the Spanish were here. Why they built these tunnels. The answers lie there." He pointed to the third passage. "Martha's injured," Thornton protested. "We need to get that strongbox and find proof against Prescott. Go if you must." "I will continue alone." Martha straightened, wincing slightly. "I'm with Nakohe. I've spent my life piecing together this town's history from fragments. I won't turn back now when the truth is finally within reach." Thornton sighed, recognizing the futility of argument. "Lead on, then." The third tunnel descended sharply, requiring careful footing on steps worn smooth by time and use. The air grew noticeably cooler, carrying a faint mineral scent. After several minutes, the passage leveled out and widened into a larger chamber. Thornton raised the lamp higher, revealing walls adorned with faded paintings, red and ochre figures of men, animals, and symbols that seemed to dance in the flickering light. Apache pictographs, Martha whispered with reverence. "These must be hundreds of years old." "A sacred cave," Nakohe confirmed, his voice equally hushed. "My people came here long before the Spanish." The chamber extended beyond the lamp's reach, but at its center stood a stone altar, roughly rectangular and waist-high. As they approached, they saw that its surface had been defaced, crude Christian crosses carved over older symbols, an attempt to claim or cleanse the site. "The Spanish found this place," Nakohe said, anger evident in his voice, "and desecrated it." Martha moved to examine the walls more closely, while Thornton inspected the altar. Nakohe stood motionless, eyes closed, as if listening to voices only he could hear. "There's something here," Thornton called, directing the lamp toward a dark recess beneath the altar. Reaching in cautiously, his fingers touched metal. He withdrew a tarnished silver container about the size of a small book, a reliquary. its surface embossed with Catholic imagery. Spanish missionaries often carried these, Martha explained, joining him, to hold sacred relics or documents. The reliquary's clasp had long since corroded shut. Thornton drew his knife and carefully worked the blade into the seam. With a metallic groan, the container opened. Inside lay a folded parchment, brittle with age, but remarkably preserved in its sealed container. Martha gently unfolded it, revealing Spanish text written in a precise hand, accompanied by drawings and maps. A missionary's journal, she translated, scanning the faded writing. Father Diego Ortega, 1687. She continued reading, her expression growing increasingly troubled. He was sent to convert the Apache, but became obsessed with their sacred sites, particularly this cave. What did he find here? Nkohi asked, joining them at last. Martha's finger traced the text carefully. According to this, the Apache believed this cave connected to the spirit world during certain celestial alignments. Gold would appear in the walls, literally materialize, then vanish again when the alignment passed. Superstition, Thornton scoffed. The Spanish didn't think so. Martha continued reading. Father Ortega writes that he witnessed it himself. Gold shimmering into existence like divine manifestation. He believed it was a miracle, a sign from God. What happened? Nkohi pressed. He revealed the secret to Spanish soldiers. They came during an alignment, extracted as much gold as they could, then sealed the cave passages to hide their discovery. Martha looked up, her eyes troubled. They killed the Apache who had shown Father Ortega the cave, then massacred the nearby camp to keep the secret. Nkohi's face hardened. And the sunstone tablet? Taken from this altar. It predicted the alignments when the gold would appear. Thornton shook his head in disbelief. This is what the founders discovered? A legend about magical appearing gold? Not just a legend, Nkohi said quietly. He moved to the chamber wall, running his hand along the rough surface. The next alignment comes soon. The summer solstice, 3 days from now. How could you possibly know that? Thornton demanded. Nkohi turned, his eyes reflecting the lamplight. Because I can feel it. The earth remembers. And so does the blood of my people. The eastern tunnel breathed stale air into their faces as they retraced their steps from the sacred cave. Thornton led the way once more, his mind wrestling with what they'd discovered. Impossible gold that appeared and vanished with the stars. Ancient Apache magic. Spanish massacres. His rational mind rejected it all, yet the evidence mounted with each passing hour. 3 days, he muttered. If what you believe is true, Nkohi, Prescott will do anything to control that cave during the solstice. Which is why we need the journal from the strongbox, Martha added. Her face had grown paler, her steps more labored. The wound was taking its toll, though she refused to acknowledge it. If Augustus Prescott documented the alignment, it would prove everything. The tunnel gradually angled upward, the packed earth giving way to stone lined with brick, more recent construction. Eventually, they reached a heavy wooden door, reinforced with iron bands similar to the one beneath Death House. This should lead to the bank's basement, Thornton said, examining the lock. No keyhole. It must open from the other side. Nkohi studied the doorframe, then pressed his weight against different sections of the surrounding wall. A small click rewarded his efforts, and a narrow panel slid open beside the door, revealing an iron lever. The Spanish were cautious, he observed. Pulling the lever down, the door's locking mechanism disengaged with a dull thud. Thornton pushed it open cautiously, revealing a small storage room filled with crates and old furniture. A wooden staircase led upward. The bank closes at 6, Martha whispered, glancing at the pocket watch she wore on a chain around her neck. It's nearly 7. Should be empty except for perhaps the night guard. They climbed the stairs silently, emerging into a narrow hallway behind the bank's main floor. Thornton peered around the corner, then signaled the others forward. The bank's interior was dimly lit by a single lamp at the guard's desk, currently unoccupied. The strongboxes are in the vault, Thornton whispered, pointing to the massive iron door standing open at the far end of the room. Standard procedure. Vaults left open at night. Individual boxes remained locked. They moved quickly across the polished floor, footsteps muffled by the expensive carpeting. The vault interior felt oppressive, a steel cage designed to protect wealth from those who might claim it. Rows of strong boxes lined the walls, each secured with its own lock. Which one? Nakohe asked, the brass key heavy in his hand. Box 7, Eliza had told them. Augustus Prescott's personal account. Thornton located it quickly, a medium-sized box near eye level. Nakohe inserted the key, turning it with deliberate care. The lock released with a satisfying click. Inside lay a single item, a leather journal, its cover cracked with age but still intact. Gold lettering on the spine read simply, A. Prescott, 1854. Martha took it reverently, opening to the first page. This is it, she confirmed. Augustus Prescott's private journal. A noise from the main floor interrupted them, the front door opening, voices speaking in hushed tones. Must be here somewhere. Check everywhere. Mayor Prescott's voice, unmistakable in its aristocratic precision. How did he know? Thornton hissed, Eliza, Martha realized with horror. They must have forced her to talk. They retreated deeper into the vault as footsteps approached. Thornton drew his revolver, positioning himself at the entrance. Nakohe touched his arm, shaking his head, then pointed upward. A small ventilation grate was set into the vault's ceiling, barely large enough for a person, but their only chance. Working quickly, Thornton gave Nakohe a boost. The Apache removed the grate, then pulled himself up with remarkable agility for a man his age. Martha passed him the journal and the sunstone tablet before Thornton helped her reach Nakohe's outstretched hands. Just as Thornton prepared to jump for the opening himself, a distinctive metallic click sounded behind him, a gun being cocked. That's far enough. Sheriff Herbert Pinkerton stood in the vault doorway, a Remington revolver aimed squarely at Thornton's chest. Behind him loomed Mayor Prescott, his round face flushed with triumph. I must say, I'm disappointed, Pinkerton continued, his Eastern accent more pronounced than ever. A man of the law, breaking into a bank vault after hours. What would your constituents think? They might wonder why a Pinkerton detective is working with a thief and murderer, Thornton replied coldly. Prescott stepped forward, his eyes fixed on the open strongbox. Where is it? Where's my grandfather's journal? Safe, Thornton said. Unlike the Apache guide your grandfather and his partners murdered. Unlike James Richardson and William Turner, Prescott's face darkened. You know nothing about my family's sacrifices to build this town. We know everything, Thornton countered. The Spanish gold, the sacred cave, the celestial alignment that makes it appear. Something flickered in Pinkerton's eyes, surprise quickly masked. The solstice, he said quietly. 3 days from now. You knew? Prescott turned to him, confusion evident. I suspected. Pinkerton never lowered his weapon. My agency has been investigating stories of Spanish gold in this region for years, but I never expected to find Apache magic at the heart of it. From above, Nakohe watched the confrontation through the ventilation opening, his hand moving slowly to the knife at his belt. Thornton caught his eye and gave an almost imperceptible shake of his head. Not yet. The journal will prove the gold belongs to the Apache, Thornton said. Your grandfather knew it, Mayor. That's why he wrote that will, to make amends before he died. A convenient forgery, Prescott sneered. With Judge Holloway's authentic seal? I think not. Pinkerton stepped closer to Thornton, his gun unwavering. Where are your companions? The Apache and the old woman? Gone, with the evidence. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Prescott's face. We need to find them now. First things first, Pinkerton replied, his attention still on Thornton. Sheriff, you'll be spending the night in your own jail. Breaking and entering, theft, perhaps even conspiracy. His thin lips twisted into a smile. I wonder how that will look on your record. As Pinkerton secured Thornton's hands behind his back with his own handcuffs, the sheriff glanced upward once more. Nakohe had vanished from the opening. Taking Martha and their evidence with him, the race for the cave had begun. Night had fallen completely by the time Nakohe and Martha emerged from a storm drain at the edge of town. Stars pierced the black velvet sky, witnesses to their desperate flight. Martha's condition had worsened, her breathing labored, skin clammy to the touch. "We need to find shelter," Nakohe said, supporting her weight as they moved away from the open streets. "Somewhere safe to examine the journal." "The church," Martha whispered. "Father Mackenzie. He's no friend to Prescott." They kept to the shadows, avoiding the pools of lamplight that spilled from windows and street posts. The journal was secured inside Nakohe's vest, the sunstone tablet heavy across his back. Twice they froze as search parties passed nearby, men with lanterns and shotguns moving through the streets with purpose. St. Augustine's Church stood on the northern edge of town, its modest steeple silhouetted against the night sky. No lights burned within, but a small cottage behind it showed the warm glow of an oil lamp through drawn curtains. Nakohe knocked softly on the cottage door. Footsteps approached, and the door opened to reveal a man in his 60s, silver-haired and lean, wearing the black clothing and white collar of his calling. "Mrs. Wilkins?" Father Mackenzie's eyes widened at Martha's condition. Then his gaze shifted to Nakohe, surprise giving way to concern. "Oh, quickly, come inside." The cottage interior was sparse but comfortable, a testament to a life of modest service. The priest helped Martha to a worn armchair, while Nakohe secured the door. "She's been shot," Nakohe explained. "The wound was treated, but she needs rest." "Shot? By whom?" "Mayor Prescott," Martha answered weakly. "We discovered his family's secret." Father Mackenzie's expression darkened as he examined her bandaged arm. "I've heard rumors all evening. The sheriff arrested. Something about a break-in at the bank." He looked up at Nakohe. "And that you're somehow involved in all of it." "The sheriff is innocent," Nakohe said. "He was protecting us while we gathered evidence." The priest fetched clean bandages and a bottle of whiskey from a cabinet. "Evidence of what exactly?" Martha winced as Mackenzie began redressing her wound. "The town's true founding, the gold that built it, the deaths at Death House." Nakohe placed the journal on a small table. "Augustus Prescott's private accounts. The final piece we needed." As Father Mackenzie worked on Martha's wound, Nakohe opened the journal. The handwriting was precise, but grew increasingly erratic in later entries. Reflecting Augustus Prescott's deteriorating mental state, the early pages detailed the discovery of the Spanish tunnels beneath what would become Blackwater Gulch. Prescott and his partners, Turner and Richardson, had been following an old map purchased from a Mexican trader. They'd expected a played-out Spanish mine, perhaps with some overlooked ore. What they found instead changed everything. April 7th, 1852, we discovered the cave today. The Indian markings, just as the map indicated. Turner believes it's worthless, superstitious nonsense. Richardson wants to keep searching for conventional deposits. Neither understands what we've truly found. May 21st, 1852, the solstice approaches. According to the Spanish documents, the alignment occurs exactly at dawn. We will be ready June 22nd, 1852, God help us. It happened exactly as the manuscripts described. As the sun's first light touched the mountain peak, the cave walls began to shimmer. Gold, pure gold, materializing before our eyes. We harvested what we could before it vanished with the shifting light. Enough wealth to build 10 towns. Richardson insists we tell no one. Turner suggests we build here, establish ourselves as founding fathers. I find I cannot sleep. The gold feels wrong somehow, unnatural. The entries continued, describing the building of Death House as both residence and fortress to protect their discovery. The partners agreed to harvest the gold only during alignments, selling it gradually to avoid suspicion. But greed and paranoia soon poisoned their partnership. February 3rd, 1854, Turner disappeared for 3 days. Claims he was in Santa Fe. I believe he's made a separate deal. Richardson suspects the same. March 15th, 1854, found Richardson searching my office. Confronted him. He threatened to expose everything, the cave, the solstice, the Apache massacre. Called us murderers and thieves. Said the gold is cursed. April 3rd, 1854. Richardson is dead. Turner claims it was an accident in the tunnels. I saw the body. No mining accident I've ever witnessed leaves such wounds. I fear what Turner has become, what we have all become. Father Mackenzie finished bandaging Martha's arm and moved to read over Nakohe's shoulder. "My God," he whispered. "So the stories about Death House?" "All true," Martha confirmed. "And there's more." Nakohe turned to the final entries written in a shaky hand. April 14th, 1854. "Turner is gone. I cannot speak of what happened in the tunnels. His blood is on my hands now, as the Apache guide's was before. The gold has poisoned us all. Rebecca knows something. I see it in her eyes. She must be silenced. April 20th, 1854. I hear them at night. Turner, Richardson, the Apache whose name we never knew. They whisper from the walls. The house knows what we did. The gold was never meant for us. May 1st, 1854. I have drafted my will. The gold must be returned. Too late for forgiveness, but perhaps the curse will end. I've hidden the tablet where no one will find it. Without it, the cave's secret remains safe. The final entry, dated May 3rd, simply read, "They are coming for me tonight." I will not resist. Nakohe closed the journal. Augustus Prescott was found hanging in Death House the next morning. From the table where Martha had placed it, the sunstone tablet seemed to absorb the lamplight, its carvings casting strange shadows. Father Mackenzie crossed himself. And now the solstice comes again. In 2 days, less, Nakohe corrected. Dawn the day after tomorrow? A sharp knock at the door startled them all. Mackenzie motioned for silence, moving cautiously to answer it. A man's voice, urgent, familiar, came from outside. "Father, it's Eliza Watts. They've beaten her badly. She needs help." "Deputy Miller," Martha whispered in recognition. Nakohe moved swiftly, gathering the journal and tablet. "A trap!" "The back door," Mackenzie directed. "Through the church, then the cemetery. There's a path to the hills." As Nakohe helped Martha to her feet, the priest removed a loose floorboard, retrieving an old cavalry revolver. "God forgive me," he murmured, checking that it was loaded. "Now go." The knocking came again, more insistent. "Father, open up." Mackenzie nodded toward the back door. "I'll buy you time." Outside, beneath the cold light of the stars, Nakohe and Martha fled toward the hills with their precious evidence, the sound of raised voices fading behind them. Sheriff Thornton sat on the narrow cot in his own jail cell, listening to the town clock strike midnight. The irony wasn't lost on him. Locked behind the same bars he'd put others behind for years, Deputy Miller had taken particular pleasure in the task, smirking as he'd turned the key. "Sheriff." A hushed voice broke the silence. Thornton looked up to see Eliza Watts standing outside his cell, her face badly bruised, one eye swollen shut. She held a ring of keys in her trembling hand. "My God, Eliza," he whispered, rising quickly. "What did they do to you?" Prescott's men were persuasive. She unlocked the cell door with practiced efficiency, but not as persuasive as they thought. Thornton stepped out, taking the keys from her. "How did you get these?" "Miller's a fool. Always has been." A ghost of her usual smile crossed her battered face. "He still thinks a woman's greatest weapon is her tears." From the sheriff's desk, Thornton retrieved his gun belt and hat. "We need to move quickly. Nakohe and Martha are in the hills." Eliza winced as she spoke. "Father Mackenzie helped them escape. He's being held at the mayor's house." Thornton checked his revolver, then searched through his desk drawers until he found what he sought. A small leather pouch containing a tarnished silver star. His father's badge from 30 years earlier, when he'd been the first sheriff of Blackwater Gulch. "There's something you should know," Eliza said as he pocketed the heirloom. "Pinkerton isn't who he claims to be." "I figured that much. He's William Turner's grandson. Rebecca Turner's letter about the gold beneath the house. It was sent to her sister back east before she died. The family has been searching for the truth ever since." Thornton absorbed this revelation. So his interest in town records wasn't about Eastern investors. He came looking for what his grandparents found, and what got them killed. A noise from the street silenced them. Voices, approaching footsteps. Thornton led Eliza quickly to the rear door of the jailhouse. "Where will you go?" she asked. "To find Nakohe." "The solstice is tomorrow at dawn. You'll need help." Eliza pressed a folded paper into his hand. "Give this to Martha. It shows the location of an old Apache campsite in the hills. My father marked it years ago. Thornton squeezed her shoulder gently. What about you? I'll create a distraction. The Red Dog still has loyal patrons who don't much care for Prescott's high-handed ways. They parted in the darkness. Thornton, slipping between buildings toward the livery stable, while Eliza headed for her saloon. The town seemed unnaturally quiet, tense with anticipation of the coming confrontation. At the stable, Thornton found his horse already saddled. The young stable boy, Tommy Wilson, emerged from the shadows. "Miss Eliza said you'd be coming," the boy whispered. "Told me to have your mount ready." "She thinks of everything," Thornton replied, pressing a coin into the boy's palm. "You didn't see me, understood?" Tommy nodded solemnly. "Sheriff!" "People are talking, saying strange things about Death House and the mayor." "What things?" "That there's Spanish gold hidden there. That the Apache man found it. That the mayor shot Mrs. Wilkins to keep it secret." The boy hesitated. "Is it true?" Thornton considered the question carefully. The truth would spread through Blackwater Gulch like wildfire, and perhaps that was exactly what they needed. "Yes," he said finally. "All of it." The town was built on stolen gold and the murder of an Apache guide. "And Mayor Prescott is willing to kill to keep it that way." Tommy's eyes widened. "What are you going to do?" "Set things right." Thornton mounted his horse. "If anyone asks about me, especially Deputy Miller, you tell them exactly what I just told you." "Every word," the boy nodded, a smile spreading across his face. "Yes, sir." Thornton rode out of town by the North Road, then cut east toward the hills once out of sight. The silver star in his pocket felt like a compass, pulling him toward justice long overdue. Meanwhile, in the mayor's study, Howard Prescott paced before the fireplace while Herbert Pinkerton examined Augustus Prescott's will under a magnifying glass. "Well?" the mayor demanded. "Is it authentic?" "The seal is genuine," Pinkerton admitted reluctantly. "Judge Holloway's distinctive mark, and the handwriting matches the journal entries." "Damn him!" Prescott collapsed into his chair. "My own grandfather, betraying his family for some misguided conscience." "He was weak," Pinkerton agreed, setting down the document. "Fortunately, his son, your father, was not. He suppressed the will, kept the gold, and now we have less than a day before the solstice." Prescott poured himself a generous whiskey. "If what the journal says is true, the cave will reveal its gold at dawn." Pinkerton's eyes gleamed with barely contained excitement. 5 million in Spanish gold, appearing from solid rock. "My grandfather wasn't mad after all. Your loyalty in this matter has been appreciated," Prescott said carefully. "There will be compensation, of course. My loyalty—" Pinkerton laughed, a hollow sound. "Mayor Prescott, surely you understand by now. My grandfather was William Turner. Your grandfather murdered him for that gold." The tension between them crackled like the fire in the grate. "Ancient history," Prescott dismissed with a wave. "What matters now is securing the cave before dawn. We need that tablet to pinpoint the exact location, and the Apache who carries it." Prescott's expression darkened. "Expendable, as is the old woman. The sheriff, too, if it comes to that. Deputies Miller and Collins are organizing men," Pinkerton reported. The priest was uncooperative, but he eventually revealed they were heading for the northern hills. "Then that's where we'll go." Prescott finished his whiskey in one swallow. At first light, outside the window, Deputy Miller listened intently, his loyalty to the mayor wavering as he heard the casual discussion of murder. The silver star his father had worn as Blackwater's second sheriff hung heavy around his neck, a family legacy now tarnished by his own actions. As he slipped away into the darkness, his decision was made. The town needed to know the truth. The northern hills embraced Nakohe and Martha in their shelter, the juniper and pine offering cover from searching eyes below. They had found the abandoned mining cabin marked on Eliza's map, little more than a shack with a collapsed corner, but sanctuary nonetheless. Inside, Martha rested against a wall, her breathing shallow but steady. The fever had broken shortly before dawn, a good sign. Nakohe sat cross-legged before the sunstone tablet, which he had placed in a shaft of morning light streaming through a gap in the roof. The stone seemed to absorb the sunlight, its carvings deepening as if alive. From a small leather pouch at his waist, he withdrew a handful of sacred herbs, sprinkling them in a circle around the tablet. "What are you doing?" Martha asked, her voice stronger than it had been the previous night. "Asking permission," Nakohe replied without looking up. "This stone was taken from my people. It has witnessed bloodshed and betrayal. I must make amends before using its power." "You truly believe it has power?" Nakohe's weathered hands traced the concentric circles on the stone's surface. "Not the stone itself, but the knowledge it contains, that is power. The Spanish recognized this. So did your town's founders." From his pouch, Nakohe removed one final item, a smooth river stone polished to a high sheen. Martha leaned forward with interest. "A seeing stone," Nakohe explained, "passed down through generations of my family. The old ones used it to focus their visions. The stone was unremarkable in appearance, save for a natural pattern that resembled an eye. Yet when Nakohe placed it in the central depression of the sunstone tablet, it fit perfectly, as if the tablet had been designed to hold it." "The missing piece," Martha whispered. Nakohe nodded. "My ancestor took it when the Spanish stole the tablet. Without it, the tablet's full secrets remained hidden. With the seeing stone in place, the tablet's design shifted subtly, the carved lines seeming to align in new patterns." Nakohe closed his eyes, his lips moving in silent communion with the stone. Martha watched in respectful silence, scientific skepticism warring with the evidence of her own eyes. After several minutes, Nakohe opened his eyes, a new certainty in his gaze. "I know the exact location now," he said quietly. "And the precise moment the gold will appear." "Dawn tomorrow," Martha confirmed. "Yes, but not just anywhere in the cave. At a specific point where the sun's first light enters through a natural shaft in the rock." Nakohe carefully removed the seeing stone, returning it to his pouch. "The Spanish never fully understood. They took what gold formed near the entrance, but never witnessed the true manifestation deeper within. The founders must have discovered more," Martha reasoned. "The wealth that built Blackwater was substantial. Prescott, Turner, and Richardson found the Spanish journals. They used the tablet correctly at least once." Nakohe's expression darkened. Then greed turned them against each other. The cabin door creaked open, causing both to tense. Sheriff Thornton stood silhouetted in the entrance, his familiar silhouette a welcome sight. "You're alive," Martha said with obvious relief. "Barely." Thornton entered, removing his hat. "Eliza helped me escape. The town's dividing into factions. Prescott's preparing a search party for the hills. They'll be looking for the cave," Nakohe said. "Without the tablet, can they find it?" "Perhaps. Augustus Prescott's journal contains descriptions. Not precise, but enough for someone determined." Thornton sat heavily on an overturned crate. "Pinkerton is William Turner's grandson. He came seeking justice for his grandparents' deaths. Or the gold," Martha suggested. "Both, I suspect." Thornton produced a small cloth bundle from his saddlebag. "I brought food. And this." He unfolded the cloth to reveal a strange object that gleamed dully in the cabin's dim light, a curved piece of metal with intricate engravings along its surface. "What is it?" Martha asked, leaning closer. "Part of an ancient weapon," Nakohe answered before Thornton could speak. "Apache craftsmanship, but using Spanish metal." He took the piece carefully. "Where did you find this?" "It was hidden in my father's things. He was Blackwater's first sheriff, appointed by the founders." Thornton watched Nakohe examine the artifact. "He left a note saying it was payment for silence about the cave incident. I never understood what it meant until now." Nakohe turned the metal piece over in his hands. "This is from a ceremonial knife, sacred to my tribe. It would have belonged to a chief or holy man." His eyes met Thornton's. "The Apache guide the founders murdered." "My father was part of it," Thornton said quietly. "Or at least he knew about it and remained silent." "The sins of the fathers," Martha murmured. "Which is why I intend to make things right." Thornton stood, his decision evident in his posture. "Prescott and his men will come at nightfall. We need to be at the cave before dawn." I know a route through the hills that should keep us ahead of them. And then, Martha asked, we used the tablet to find the exact location. We witnessed the gold's appearance. Nakohe slipped the metal piece into his pouch alongside the seeing stone, and we ensure it goes to the right people this time. The Apache, Thornton confirmed, not just my tribe. Nakohe's gaze was steady. This town was built on stolen wealth and murdered innocents. The gold should restore what was taken from all who were wronged. Martha struggled to her feet, determination overcoming weakness. I've spent my life piecing together Blackwater's true history. I won't miss seeing its final chapter. Outside, dark clouds gathered on the horizon, promising a storm by nightfall. The wind carried distant sounds, men's voices, horses' hooves on rocky ground. The search had begun. Thornton checked his revolver, his expression grim. We have a few hours at most. We should move deeper into the hills. Nakohe carefully wrapped the sunstone tablet. The storm will help hide our passage, and perhaps it too is part of the alignment's power. As they prepared to leave the cabin's shelter, each felt the weight of history upon them, and the promise of either justice or tragedy with the coming dawn. Thunder rolled across the hills as night fell, the promised storm arriving with theatrical timing. Rain lashed the sparse pine trees, turning the narrow trail to mud beneath their feet. Thornton led the way, his experience with the terrain proving invaluable as they navigated in near darkness. Martha followed, her strength gradually returning despite her injury. Nakohe brought up the rear, the sunstone tablet secured against his back, protected from the elements. The cave entrance should be just beyond that ridge, Thornton called over his shoulder, pointing to a dark silhouette against the storm-clouded sky. Another mile, perhaps less. A flash of lightning illuminated the landscape in stark relief, revealing the rugged beauty of the hills and the line of torches moving along a parallel trail below them. Prescott's men, Martha observed grimly. They're following the old mining road. They'll reach the valley before us, Thornton calculated. Cut us off from the most obvious approach to the cave. Nakohe studied the distant torches, counting their number. At least a dozen men, well armed, judging by their silhouettes. They took shelter beneath an overhanging rock, momentarily escaping the worst of the downpour. Thornton removed a small flask from his coat, offering it first to Martha, who accepted a modest sip of whiskey. We need another route, he said, wiping rain from his face. One Prescott wouldn't know about. The Apache used these hills for centuries before the white man came, Nakohe replied. There will be paths your maps don't show. From inside his vest, he withdrew a folded piece of deerskin, carefully opening it to reveal markings made with natural pigments, an ancient map of the region, drawn from the perspective of his people. My grandfather made this, Nakohe explained, his finger tracing a line that represented the ridge above them. The sacred cave had many entrances. The Spanish found only the main one, as did your town's founders. Martha leaned closer, her historian's interest piqued despite their predicament. Your people knew about the gold manifestation? They did not think of it as gold, Nakohe corrected, but as the earth spirit made visible. A place where the boundary between worlds thinned during certain alignments. Thornton studied the deerskin map with skepticism. How can you be sure this is accurate? It must be generations old. My people did not measure worth by how recently something was created, Nakohe replied without rancor. Truth does not expire with time. He indicated a marking near the ridge's northern face. Here, a narrow entrance, used only by those undergoing vision quests. It leads directly to the chamber where the manifestation is strongest. Can you find it in this storm? In darkness? Nako's expression remained confident. I can. They continued their journey, leaving the main trail to follow a nearly invisible path that clung to the steeper sections of the ridge. The rain had slackened to a steady drizzle, but the ground remained treacherous. Twice Martha slipped, saved from falling only by Thornton's quick reflexes. As they neared the northern face, a sound carried through the night, voices raised in argument, echoing against the rocks. They crouched low, working their way forward until they could see the source. In a small clearing below, illuminated by sputtering torches, Mayor Prescott stood facing Herbert Pinkerton. Between them, looking uncomfortable, was Deputy Miller. Behind Prescott, several townsmen shifted uneasily, their expressions suggesting they'd begun to question their mission. "The main entrance is just beyond those rocks," Pinkerton insisted, pointing to a dark opening in the hillside. "We should secure it now, set up guards, and waste hours sitting in the rain," Prescott countered. "The Apache won't approach until near dawn. We'll make camp here, post sentries." "You don't understand." Pinkerton's voice rose with barely contained frustration. "Without the tablet, we need time to find the exact location within the cave system. It's extensive," Miller spoke up, his usual bravado noticeably diminished. "Some of the men are talking, Mayor. They're asking questions about Mrs. Wilkins, about the sheriff being locked up." Questions. Prescott turned on the deputy. "They're being paid for their guns, not their opinions." "There's talk in town," Miller continued doggedly. "About your grandfather." "About the death house." Prescott's hand moved to the ornate revolver at his hip, a gold-plated weapon that gleamed even in the poor light, its ivory handle carved with his family's initials. "Are you questioning me now, Deputy?" The confrontation might have escalated further, but a shout from one of the sentries interrupted them. "Riders coming!" From town. All eyes turned toward the trail, where several horsemen approached at speed despite the treacherous conditions. As they drew closer, Nakohe recognized Eliza Watts at the lead, followed by Father Mackenzie and several men he didn't know. "More complications," Thornton muttered. "Or allies," Martha suggested. Nakohe studied the ridge face, finding what he sought, a narrow fissure, nearly invisible unless one knew exactly where to look. "There," he said quietly. While they're distracted, they moved with deliberate care, the sounds of confrontation below covering their approach to the hidden entrance. The fissure was barely wide enough for a man to pass sideways, but it opened into a narrow tunnel beyond. "I'll go first," Nakohe said, removing the sunstone tablet from his back. "This passage will take us directly to the inner chamber." Martha peered dubiously into the dark opening. "How far?" "Not far, but we must move carefully. The Spanish never found this route, so it remains as nature made it." As Nakohe prepared to enter, Thornton placed a hand on his shoulder. "What about them?" he asked, nodding toward the growing confrontation below. "Their conflict is a distraction we need," Nakohe replied. "By the time they resolve it, we'll be in position." The storm's fury was abating, the clouds beginning to thin. In a few hours, dawn would break over the eastern peaks, and the solstice alignment would occur. The cave would reveal its ancient secret once more, and this time, Nakohe was determined that justice would finally be served. The narrow passage twisted deeper into the earth, its walls damp with moisture that glistened in the faint light of Thornton's storm lantern. Nakohe led with confidence, his steps sure despite the uneven footing. The air grew warmer as they descended, carrying a mineral scent that seemed to intensify with each turn of the passageway. "We're getting close," Nakohe whispered, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "The inner chamber lies just ahead." Martha's breathing had become labored again, but her determination never wavered. "I can hear something," she said. "Like singing." Thornton strained to listen. A faint sound reached them. Not singing exactly, but a resonant hum that seemed to emanate from the stone itself, felt more than heard. "The alignment approaches," Nakohe explained. "The earth prepares itself." The passage widened suddenly, opening into a chamber of breathtaking beauty. Crystalline formations studded the walls and ceiling, catching the lantern light and fracturing it into thousands of rainbow fragments. The floor sloped gently downward toward the center, where a natural basin had formed in the stone. "The Spanish never found this place," Nakohe said with quiet reverence. "Nor did your town's founders." Martha turned slowly, taking in the chamber's natural splendor. "It's magnificent." Thornton raised the lantern higher, revealing ancient paintings that adorned the walls between the crystal formations. Handprints in red ochre, stylized figures of men and animals. Symbols whose meanings had been lost to time. My ancestors came here for countless generations, Nakohe explained. Not for gold, but for wisdom. The visions granted during the alignment were considered more valuable than any metal. He moved to the chamber's center, where the natural basin narrowed to a small depression surrounded by radiating lines carved into the stone floor. With great care, he removed the sunstone tablet from its wrapping and placed it precisely over the depression. It fit perfectly, as if it had been crafted specifically for this spot. "Now we wait," he said, sitting cross-legged beside the tablet. "When dawn breaks, a shaft of light will enter the chamber through—" He pointed upward to where a narrow fissure ran through the ceiling, currently visible only as a slightly darker line against the darkness. The alignment must be precise. Martha studied the wall paintings, while Thornton secured the chamber's entrance, piling loose stones to narrow the passage. If Prescott's men found the hidden route, they would at least have warning. "How much time do we have?" Thornton asked, checking his pocket watch. "Perhaps an hour before first light," Nakohe estimated. The storm has passed. The sky clears. As if in confirmation, a faint glimmer of starlight appeared through the ceiling fissure, casting a silvery beam into the chamber. The resonant hum grew slightly stronger, vibrating through the stone beneath their feet. From his saddlebag, Thornton removed a wooden box, simply made but with a small silver plaque on its lid. He placed it before Nakohe. "I found this in my father's things as well," he explained. "I think it belongs with your people." Nakohe opened the box carefully. Inside, nestled on faded velvet, lay an intricately crafted copper disc, its surface etched with symbols matching those on the chamber walls. Small turquoise and coral pieces were inlaid around its edge, catching the light with deep color. "The sun disk," Nakohe whispered, a rare display of emotion crossing his weathered features. "We thought it lost forever. What is it?" Martha asked, moving closer. "A ceremonial piece used by our holy men during the alignment rituals." Nakohe lifted it reverently. "It focuses the light, directing the manifestation. My father wrote that he took it from Augustus Prescott's house the night he died," Thornton said. "He claimed he was keeping it safe, but he kept it hidden, like the truth about this place," Nakohe finished without rancor. "Perhaps he knew its time would come." Carefully, Nakohe placed the copper disc at the center of the sunstone tablet, where it fit into a circular depression. The arrangement was now complete. The tablet on the chamber floor, the seeing stone in its center, and the sun disk above it. The hum emanating from the stone intensified, rising and falling in a rhythm that resembled breathing. Small crystals embedded in the chamber walls began to resonate in response, creating harmonics that filled the space with ethereal sound. "It begins," Nakohe said softly. From the entrance came the sound of falling stones, their barrier being disturbed. Thornton drew his revolver, positioning himself where he could cover the narrow passage. "Someone's coming," he warned. Martha moved to his side, surprising him by drawing a small derringer from her skirt pocket. "Eliza insisted," she explained with a tight smile. Nakohe remained seated by the tablet, unmoved by the threat. "It doesn't matter who enters now," he said with calm certainty. "The alignment comes. The earth will speak. All will witness what has been hidden." More stones clattered in the passage, followed by a shaft of torchlight. A voice called out, not threatening but urgent. "Sheriff, Mrs. Wilkins, are you in there?" "Deputy Miller?" Thornton responded, his gun still raised. The deputy appeared in the entrance, alone and unarmed, his hands raised to show peaceful intent. "Don't shoot," he pleaded. "I'm not with them anymore. Where's Prescott?" Thornton demanded, fighting with Pinkerton at the main entrance. "Half the town's shown up, taking sides." Miller stepped cautiously into the chamber, his eyes widening at its beauty. "Eliza told everyone what's been happening. About the gold, the murders, about what really happened at Death House." "And they believed her?" Martha asked incredulously. "Enough did." Miller removed his deputy's badge, looking at it with something like shame. "Including me." Through the ceiling fissure, the pre-dawn sky had lightened to deep blue. The stars were fading, and the chamber's hum had grown to a vibration they could feel in their bones. The alignment was nearly upon them. It doesn't matter who believes now, Nakohe said, his gaze fixed on the narrow shaft of light moving inexorably toward the copper disk. In moments, all will see the truth with their own eyes. The first ray of dawn light pierced the ceiling fissure like a golden spear, striking the copper sun disk with unerring precision. The disk began to glow, not with reflected light, but with an inner luminescence that spread outward along the etched patterns. The chamber's humming intensified, vibrating through their bodies with almost painful intensity. "It's happening," Martha whispered, lowering her small gun as she watched in awe. The light refracted through the sun disk, splitting into 12 distinct beams that touched specific points around the chamber walls. Where each beam struck, the stone began to shimmer as if becoming liquid at its surface. "The doorway's open," Nakohe explained, his voice steady despite the extraordinary events unfolding around them. "Between our world and what lies beyond." Deputy Miller backed against the wall, his face pale with shock. "This can't be real." "It's very real," Thornton assured him, holstering his revolver. No human threat seemed significant in the face of what they were witnessing. From the passage came sounds of urgent movement, more visitors approaching. Thornton tensed again, but Nakohe shook his head. "Let them come," he said calmly. "All must see." Eliza Watts appeared first, her bruised face transformed by wonder as she entered the chamber. Father Mackenzie followed, crossing himself instinctively at the sight. Behind them came others. Townspeople Thornton recognized, ordinary men and women drawn by the spreading truth about their town's foundation. "My God," Eliza breathed, moving to Martha's side. "It's beautiful." The chamber walls continued to shimmer where the light beams touched them, the stone surface appearing to ripple like water. Slowly, impossibly, something began to emerge from within the solid rock, small nuggets of pure gold, materializing as if being pushed through from another dimension, just as the journal described, Martha said, her historian's skepticism overwhelmed by the evidence before her eyes. The gold continued to form. Larger pieces now, veins spreading outward from each light point. The nuggets fell to the chamber floor with soft musical clinks. Accumulating in growing piles, more townspeople crowded into the chamber, their rivalries and differences momentarily forgotten in the face of the miracle they witnessed. A collective gasp rose as a particularly large formation emerged, a solid sheet of gold the size of a man's torso, sliding from the rock as if it had always been there. Merely hidden from view, the Spanish called it oro fantasma, ghost gold, Father Mackenzie said quietly. The church declared it demonic, forbade its pursuit. "Not demonic," Nakohe corrected, "sacred. The earth reveals its heart only to those worthy of its trust." The light shaft moved incrementally as the sun rose higher, the beams tracking across the chamber walls, leaving trails of gold in their wake. The wealth accumulating before their eyes was staggering. Millions in precious metal, manifesting from solid stone. Hurried footsteps in the passage announced new arrivals. Herbert Pinkerton stumbled into the chamber, his normally impeccable appearance disheveled, a bleeding cut above his eye. Behind him, pushing through with desperate determination, came Mayor Prescott. "Stop them!" Prescott shouted, though it wasn't clear who he was addressing. "The gold is mine, my birthright." Pinkerton froze at the sight of the manifestation, his expression caught between disbelief and rapture. "It's real," he whispered. "My grandfather wasn't mad." "Stand back, Howard," Thornton warned, as the mayor attempted to approach the growing piles of gold. "This doesn't belong to you." "It never did. My grandfather found it," Prescott snarled, drawing his ornate gold-plated revolver. "My family built that town. Everything you have exists because of us." "Because of theft and murder," Martha countered, rising to her feet despite her weakness. "Your grandfather admitted as much in his will. He wanted the gold returned to its rightful owners." Prescott's face contorted with rage. "A moment of weakness. My father understood what was at stake. Our legacy." From his pocket, he withdrew a small leather-bound book, a duplicate of Augustus Prescott's journal, but with pages selectively removed. This is the real history of Blackwater Gulch, the version my father wanted preserved. A sanitized account, Martha said with disgust. Lies to protect your family name, the necessary truth. Prescott's hand trembled as he waved the altered journal. This town, my town, was built by visionaries, not thieves. The mayor's attention fixed on the sunstone tablet and sun disk at the chamber's center, his eyes calculating. "Remove those," he ordered Nakohe. "Give them to me. Now." "I cannot," Nakohe replied simply. "The alignment is in progress. To disturb it would be dangerous." "Dangerous?" Prescott scoffed. "More lies to keep the gold for yourself." He stepped forward aggressively, but Thornton intercepted him. "That's enough, Howard. Look around you. Half the town is here, witnessing both the gold and your behavior. It's over." Indeed, the chamber had filled with townspeople, shopkeepers, ranchers, miners, and laborers. Their expressions ranged from awe at the manifestation to growing anger as they observed their mayor's desperate greed. "It can't end like this," Prescott insisted, his voice rising to a shout. "I won't let it!" With sudden violence, he shoved past Thornton and lunged toward the center of the chamber. Intent on seizing the sun disk, Nakohe moved to intercept him. But Prescott swung his revolver toward the Apache's chest. "Step aside, or die like your ancestors," he snarled. The chamber fell silent, except for the resonant hum of the stones. Even the gold seemed to pause in its manifestation, as if the earth itself held its breath. "Howard, don't," Eliza warned. "Look at what's happening." The light beams had begun to pulse erratically, the shimmering walls darkening where Prescott's shadow fell across them. The vibration underfoot intensified, small stones rattling across the chamber floor. "The alignment is disrupted," Nakohe said urgently. "The balance must be maintained." Prescott ignored the warnings, his attention fixed solely on the wealth before him. With a triumphant cry, he reached for the sun disk, his fingers closing around its edge. The copper disk flared with blinding light, a surge of energy racing up Prescott's arm. He screamed, not in pain but in ecstasy, as golden light traced his veins like living fire. For one impossible moment, the mayor himself began to shimmer, as if caught between worlds. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the light vanished. The chamber plunged into relative darkness, illuminated only by Thornton's lantern and the fading glow of the sun disk, where Howard Prescott had stood. There remained only a perfect statue of solid gold, a man frozen in a moment of terrible revelation, his face a mask of greed and fear combined. 1 month later, wildflowers bloomed across the hills surrounding Blackwater Gulch, their vibrant colors a stark contrast to the weathered buildings below. The town had changed in ways both subtle and profound since the events in the sacred cave. The gold statue that had been Howard Prescott now stood in the town square, not as a memorial to the man, but as a permanent reminder of greed's consequences. Sheriff Thornton stood on the porch of what had once been called Death House, watching as workers removed the last of the old boards from its windows. Sunlight streamed into rooms that had known only darkness for decades, banishing shadows along with the weight of the past. "It looks different," Martha Wilkins observed, joining him on the porch. Her arm had healed well, though she still carried it slightly favored against her side. "Almost welcoming." "Amazing what truth can do," Thornton replied. From inside came the sound of children's laughter. Apache children from the reservation, 50 miles south, invited to help reclaim the space. Nakohe had insisted that renewal must begin with the youngest generation. "The museum opens next week?" Thornton asked. Martha nodded, pride evident in her expression. "The Blackwater Historical Society's first exhibition will tell the complete story. Spanish exploration, Apache heritage, the town's true founding. No more sanitized versions." She held out a document bearing multiple signatures and an official territorial seal, the newly ratified town charter that formally acknowledged the site's significance to the Apache people and established protections. "For the sacred cave. It's official," she said. The cave and surrounding lands are recognized as Apache territory, with a permanent trust established for their benefit. Thornton took the charter, studying the signatures with satisfaction. Herbert Pinkerton kept his word. Surprising how a man can change when confronted with truth, Martha mused. His testimony about his grandfather's murder was what convinced the territorial governor to approve the arrangement. And the gold, being catalogued now, 5 million in Spanish gold, just as the legends claimed. Martha adjusted her spectacles. After restitution to the Apache Nation and compensation to families of those who died here, there's enough remaining to ensure Blackwater's future, legitimate this time. Down the hill, Eliza Watts emerged from her saloon, which now bore a new sign, the Prospector's Truth. She had used her share of the settlement to purchase adjacent buildings, expanding into a proper hotel that already attracted curious visitors from as far as San Francisco. The church bells rang, signaling midday. Father Mackenzie had established a weekly ceremony that combined Christian prayer with Apache blessing, an unusual practice that initially raised eyebrows, but increasingly seemed right for a town rebuilding on honesty rather than division inside Death House, now officially renamed Reconciliation Hall. Nakohe worked with young Apache apprentices, teaching them the symbols and patterns that would adorn the main exhibition room. The sunstone tablet and sun disk would remain with his people, but reproductions would be displayed to educate visitors about the alignment's significance. "Sheriff," a voice called from the street. Deputy Miller, now wearing the full sheriff's badge himself since Thornton's retirement, approached with an envelope in hand. "Telegram from the territorial capital." Thornton opened it, reading quickly. "The governor's approved our town council structure. First elections next month. Will you run?" Martha asked. Thornton shook his head. "My father helped cover up the original crimes. I've done my part to set things right, but leadership should come from those without our complicated history." Miller nodded in understanding. "Eliza's considering it. So is Old Man Jenkins from the Mercantile. Both good choices," Thornton approved. As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the valley, Nakohe joined them on the porch, wiping paint from his hands with a cloth. Around his neck hung a simple leather cord from which dangled a small carved wooden amulet, a gift from his tribe's elders in recognition of his role in restoring their heritage. "It is good," he said simply, surveying the town below. "You're really staying?" Thornton asked. "For now." Nakohe touched the amulet thoughtfully. "There is more work to be done, more stories to preserve," Martha smiled. "You'll always have a place here. All your people will." From the hills came the sound of horses, a small band of Apache riders approaching along the newly established Northern Trail. Among them rode children and elders, coming to see the transformation of a place that had once held only painful memories for their tribe. "The earth remembers," Nakohe said quietly. "But it also forgives when justice is done." As twilight descended on Blackwater Gulch, lanterns were lit in windows that had long stood dark. The Death House, once avoided, feared, and whispered about, now stood as a beacon on its hill, its lights visible for miles across the desert. Inside, the wooden amulet around Nakohe's neck caught the last rays of sunset through the western windows. The carved symbol upon it, a perfect miniature of the sunstone pattern, seemed to glow briefly with inner light, a small reminder of the greater forces that had shaped their shared destiny. The Apache children gathered around as Nakohe began a story, not of gold or greed or death, but of healing and renewal. Outside, Martha and Thornton watched the first stars appear, each privately reflecting on how completely their lives had changed since the night a weary Apache had pushed open a creaking door that everyone else had feared to approach. Sometimes, Thornton thought, the greatest courage wasn't in facing what others feared, but in seeing beyond it to the truth that waited on the other side.